Street Journal poll shows that Vice President Kamala Harris has taken a narrow lead over
Madam Vice President, Governor Walz, thank you so much for sitting down with me and bringing the bus. The bus tour is well underway here in Georgia. You have less time to make...
The state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so...
Happy Friday, and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Friday, August 30th, 2024. We were off last weekend because I wasn't around, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Val Atkinson is here today. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed.
Val, I was in New England. I was in New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut. And this year, I went back and looked. This year, I've been in all the states east of the Mississippi in 1 year's time. Every state. I've been in there at least something. I drove through or been driving in one of the states east of the Mississippi. That includes Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee. I've actually driven through in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, blah, blah, blah. You just go down the list. But I've also been in Nevada. I've been in Arizona. I've been in Oregon and Washington State. I've been in a lot of states this year, Val. And one of the things that I've seen since January is a lot of political ads because we're in political season. People are running for president. And what I was surprised about is I've seen a lot of ads for Kamala Harris in places that you don't normally think they would be campaigning in. I want to start there. I know that in the lead-in, everybody saw the clip of the interview on CNN, and we're going to spend a good deal of time on that. But you're the media politics guy. I remind people all the time, you used to be a college professor, you used to teach media politics, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I was in New Hampshire, and there are Kamala Harris ads on in New Hampshire, in Maine, in Vermont. And I think it's because she has a bunch of money. But I want you to tell me, are they doing a campaign in all 50 states, which is something that Hillary Clinton didn't do? She got criticized for because it didn't seem like they understood that there was a possibility that she was going to need every single vote everywhere, and maybe they left some on the table. So let's start there. What do you think about this? Literally, like I said, all the states I named, I've seen either Joe Biden ads or Kamala Harris ads in those states. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great strategy. First of all, it answers the question that I had early on about why doesn't the Harris administration or Harris campaign force the Trump campaign to play more defense? And with all of this money, what that does, it allows her to go into places that traditionally Democrats don't go in. And what it forces the Trump campaign to do is maybe even defend in some of those areas that you thought you never did have to defend in because it's so red. That's draining your resources. That's taking money away from some other place, maybe a battleground state that you may have to go to, but you can't spend as much time in because you've taken some of those resources and did a couple of ads in, let's say, Indiana, which you thought was a safe red state. So I think it's a brilliant strategy, being that you got all this money, to use it in some non-traditional places, which is all red states or states that are leaning red, particularly the states that's leaning red, because it really catches their attention then. Because if Trump were only up by a point or two in a particular place, mainly battleground states that may be leaning red, and Harris goes in and spends, let's say $50-60 million, that's a lot of pressure on the Trump administration to decide Do I try to match that by, or do I say forget it and lose that point or two? A lot of pressure on her. So to answer your question directly, I say it's a brilliant move on the part of the Harris campaign.
Well, here's the other part of it. You said it. You said that the polls. Now, we're not poll watchers uh, generally here. We're a bit skeptical of a lot of the polls because the last time they didn't adequately reflect what went on, but they didn't reflect what went on 4 years prior with Hillary Clinton. Or maybe the Clinton campaign just messed up by not following the strategy that Harris and them are following now, which is to go everywhere, regardless of whether you think you have it tied up or not. But there's a new poll out. Let's take a look at this and then we'll talk about it.
A new Wall Street Journal poll shows that Vice President Kamala Harris has taken a narrow lead over former President Donald Trump. Harris had 48% support to Trump's 47% in a head-to-head test, claiming an advantage within the survey's margin of error.
This poll has heightened importance in some ways because it's coming right after the Democratic National Convention, and that convention and the weeks leading up to it were so crucial for Kamala Harris as she tried to essentially reintroduce herself to the American public.
Okay, let's get to business. Let's get to business.
Here are the major takeaways from the poll. According to the poll, more than 80% of people say they feel like they know enough about Harris to have an opinion about her.
There could be some downside there if she's still trying to tell people things about herself, but it's clear that she has established herself with voters in a way, and at least some of the story she's trying to tell appears to be breaking through.
So, Val, the Wall Street Journal says that, after the convention, there was a clear bounce for Harris, up as much as 5 points nationally, but in some of those battleground states. And when they list all the battleground states, including North Carolina, she was either tied or up 2 or 3, right? So that includes Georgia and Ohio, in Pennsylvania. I mean, not Ohio, but Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, not Ohio, because Ohio still seems to be in the Trump orbit. We know that these are volatile and things can happen to shift the numbers. At one point, the national poll was showing that she had a 5-point lead, but there's a lot of things that can undo that. You could say the wrong thing or some news come out, and I'm certainly sure that the opposition research on the Trump side is looking for that thing that would, collapse the polls back to an even race. My thinking, Val, though, is that this is an even race anyway. I mean, even if you look at the 2 times Obama won, even though electoral vote-wise he won decently, Trump won okay, Biden just squeaked by. So the last, I don't know how many election cycles, it's been pretty close every time. That tells me that the electorate is pretty entrenched, and what you have to do is probably depend on your get out to vote. Okay, so here's the question. Who's going to win to get out the vote this time around? Because Trump doesn't seem to care about the numbers at all. Every time I hear him talk about it, he's like, but is he got a different plan? Or does he not think to get out the vote is important? Or he doesn't think it's important because he has the Supreme Court in his hands and some of these other things. Why is Trump not concerned about getting people out to vote?
Well, you first of all, you have to take everything Trump says through the prism of whether he's lying, whether he's trying to sell you something, or whether he's just ignorant on that issue. It's going to be one of the three every time he opens his mouth. And the last thing you should do is to take serious and take factually whatever he says. It's like debating one of the residents of an insane asylum. You know what I mean? What are you doing debating this guy? You're not going to get anything decent to come out of his mouth. But to go directly to your question, I think that Trump is trying to keep his base motivated and keep them thinking that don't worry about it, we're going to win, and that sort of thing. While at the same time, I think he's putting all of his marbles in the whole piece of voter suppression and intimidation to block the turnout. And that was your question: who's going to win the GOTV battle? Get out to vote. I think Kamala Harris and her group is going to win it. Not by as much of a margin as we should, because I think Trump is going to be successful, minimally successful, in intimidation and voter suppression. So that's going to really kind of put a damper on things in terms of how well we should have won the race. The thing that I worry about most, though, Ed, is the electors and the shenanigans that's going to go on with that. That even if we win the voter turnout, they have plans right now to decertify or not certify in the beginning the election results, which, as you know, it takes 270 to win. And if no candidate gets 270, well, it's up to the House of Representatives to choose the next president. And you know how that's going to go. That's what I worry about mostly. I think that's where he thinks his backstop is, right there.
Yeah, I want to remind you, you're listening to or watching The Deal. If you're listening on the podcast, we appreciate it. Tell people about it. We want to grow the audience, so continue to subscribe. And if you subscribe, you never miss an episode. If you're watching us, that's the young-looking guy over there on the other side. That's Val Atkinson, former political science professor at North Carolina Central University. And the old guy's me. I'm Ed Clark. And you know, Val, I take your wisdom real serious, because I know you worked on a number of campaigns and that kind of thing. And I want to go back to the polls real quick before we end this segment, because the next segment I want to dig deep into the Harris Walls interview that was on CNN. But let's finish this segment talking about polls again real quick. When you see those poll numbers, the average person who's probably more concerned that college football started last night, or the NFL is going to start in a week, or that they got to go to the grocery store, or whatever else, right? They're not looking at the polls. It's crazy. People like me and you and the pundits that are on those TV shows that look at the polls or whatever. Have polls ever swayed people to pick a particular candidate? Can you think of in the recent presidential elections where the polls actually made a difference in terms of how people voted? Had you ever looked at that in your professor role, and any of your students ever do any research on that?
No, not recently, because most of the polls recently, if they're not within the margin of error, they are still really, really close and tight. And the only time that polls do influence somebody's decision as far as voting is concerned is when there's a blowout in one way or the other, and somebody says, well, there's no need in going to the poll, we're going to win anyway. So if it's not a blowout, then it doesn't really have an impact on somebody's ability or need to go out and vote. That I've seen it happen where it's a much closer race than anybody thought, and somebody who was on the fence as to whether they're going to vote or not said, I better make sure I vote. I can do some of those other things later. That's the only way. But getting down into the weeds about what candidate A said, what percentage of the people agrees with candidate B, and they don't care about that kind of stuff. They don't get into it. This is for the pundits and people like me, the political science professors, other teachers, talk show hosts. that's for them. Because depending upon how the poll questions are constructed, you can almost predetermine what your answers are going to be and in what category. It's just like a district attorney getting together a grand jury. You know, so long, Mr. Defendant, you're going to go to trial if the DA wants you to. There's no question about that. Same thing with these polls. I saw one recently that asked a question, what age group mostly supported Biden and then dropped off for Harris when she took over? And how did Trump fare in all of these machinations? Well, people who are unaware would go away saying, damn, Harris is doing a lot better than Biden, but it appears that seniors still are favoring Trump. No, you got fooled, because the people that put this poll together already decided that they were going to make the decision about age, and they didn't give a damn which one you chose, as long it's an old con trick, you know? What do you want the little emblem, Ed, on your Mercedes I'm trying to sell you? Do you want your initials on the driver's side door, or do you want it on the passenger side? And I don't give a shit which side you want it on, as long as you buy the car, okay?
Right.
And that's what they're doing with these polls. See?
Yeah.
They don't care as long as you walk away saying, well, it's all about age. It's all about age. The seniors really still support Trump. No, you could have done that same thing with religion, with education. You could have done it with race. You could have done it with many other things. So when you look at the poll itself, try to find out what are some of the other variables in there. Look at crosstabs, you know, find out if there's a longitudinal study somewhere that they've done to coincide with this little piece that you got here, you know? There are so many things that make polling an imperfect science, and it's given too much credit and shouldn't be given the credit to people outside of the media, outside of the polling services, which are making all the money doing this kind of stuff in the first place, and outside of candidates who lie because they buy their own polls and tell the people how to construct it. They already know what the outcome is going to be. They know what outcome they want. So they got smart people that construct polls, and they know who to call and what to do, and voila, you got poll results that are favorable to you, you know? But
I'm gonna say that there's a poll out that says Val Atkinson should be president of the United States. I hear some music in my ear, and so when we get back, we're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on getting Val in as the nominee running for president of the United States, because we're gonna put out a poll saying that his name is number one on the list. Stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
See it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
And welcome back to our second segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Friday, August 30th, 2024. Val Atkinson is here. We're chopping it up, talking about mainly the presidential election today, because that seems to be dominating the news right now, Val. And last night, Kamala Harris sat down with Tim Walz to do an interview on CNN with Dana Bash. Let's take a look at the clip. We'll just start there, and then we'll talk about it.
implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one. What about you?
Well, I'm excited about this agenda, too. As I said, the idea of inspiring America to what can be. And I think many of these things that the Vice President's proposing are things that we share in values. And the child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We did it in Minnesota to have a federal partner in this. Unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
So, Val, the interview starts off like you would expect. It says, what are you going to do the first day you're in office? And it's a typical answer. You talk about whatever your main policy position is, right? Helping people reduce the cost of living, whatever, blah blah blah, which should be, what you're trying to do. I mean, there's been some inflation pressures, whatever, blah blah blah. In terms of the answer that, let's start with the easy question. In terms of the answer that Kamala Harris gave about what she would do at the beginning of her term, nobody knows what they're going to do at the beginning of the term. It's a throwaway question, but in terms of how she answered it and how she did in that first part of the interview, what's your assessment generally of how it went?
It was a throwaway question. I agree on that. I thought she handled herself very, very well because everybody knew this was a test to see if CNN could throw a few got you questions out there. How would she respond? Would she do something to show a case of immaturity, do anything unpresidential, show that there's a lack of detailed knowledge about a particular subject matter or whatever? That's what this was about. That there were two entities here that had a dog in this fight. That was the media and the Trump campaign. They were both looking for ammunition to change the narrative of what was going on out there after the Democratic convention, where she was riding high, as you indicated earlier. But that didn't happen to go to the end. They don't have anything to put their hooks into, but they are still trying. There was nothing in this in my opinion, for Kamala. It was nothing in it for Tim. This was an interview that I wrote a piece on saying it should not have happened. I would not have recommended, if I were on her campaign, that she should have done that. Because this is a stop of the momentum, and find something, anything within this that you can make the headline in tomorrow morning's tabloid and tomorrow morning's press. Because you see what we're talking about here. I've been watching CNN and MSNBC this morning, along with Fox. That's all they're talking about was the interview. Somebody is going to try to hang on to something. It could be her answer to immigration, her answer to fracking, her general answer that people felt was a flip-flop on both of those two issues. Questions about what is Biden administration doing that she would do differently? Why is she doing this? Why would she be doing the same thing that the Biden administration did if she's talking about moving in a new direction, So that's what this is. The purpose of this interview was for the media and for the Trump campaign to get something that they can talk about for the next 60 some odd days. Okay. That's what they want to do. And I thought she did fairly well of not giving them a bombshell anyway to talk about. They're going to talk about the flip flop. And they're going to talk a little bit about Tim and his, whether he carried weapons in combat or not, and his driving record. They're going to do that. And we knew that all of that was going to come up. The issue is, how long is this going to last? And will we have time enough, the Democratic Party, of getting back to where we were before the interview last night and moving upward? Because I expect her to lose a point or so in the poll between now and the debate. And if she doesn't make Trump do something really awful, like get pissed off and walk off the stage, if she doesn't get him to do something stupid like that, she could lose another point after the debate.
Yeah.
But she'll still be, after this interview and after this debate, I see her still ahead in the poll that we talked about, that she's up by 5, but I think that will be cut and she'll be up only by a point or 2. And this is what I did not want to happen, because this was not mandated by law. Nobody forced her to do this. She decided, yeah, I'll do the interview. Yeah, I'll do the debate. And let's have open mic and all of this stuff. You're playing right into the con man's hand.
Well,
And
we'll talk about we'll talk about the debate and what the rules are going to be in just a minute. But I do want to remind folks that you're listening to and watching The Deal. Again, please subscribe, tell your friends, and as we get closer to election day, Val, the pressure to be somewhere, to be on the debate stage, to do other interviews, whatever, is probably going to just only increase. So let's pretend like you're David Plouffe and you and all the other people on the Harris campaign that are sitting there, and you look at this interview from last night. I will agree that there wasn't anything in there that hurt her. It's because part of it is the interviewer, right? We talked about this off mic. Jake Tapper asked the questions different than Dana Bash, right? It would have been a different interview had it been Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity, and they could have been asking the same questions, right? They probably would have went in the same direction. Going forward, if you're saying right now that the interview is only a losing proposition, do you think she's going to feel pressured to do another one of these? And then we'll talk about the debate. But what do you think this is going to be it for the interviews after they sit down and look at and do their assessment on it?
I do. The only exception to that answer that I just gave you would be if they decided to do one with MSNBC. If they decided to do that, I think they would go with that. They won't do one with ABC or Fox. I don't think they'll do that. If they do, they will surprise the hell out of me, because that's really would be a worse situation than what they have right now. It's a worse decision than the one they made to interview with CNN, and because they get nothing out of it. You know, you can't give them something and make them go away. If you think I'm lying about that, ask Bill Clinton and his handlers how he did with Ken Starr by trying to give him a little piece of information here or there and make him go away. Because Ken Starr's job was to stick with it until he found something to impeach Bill Clinton on. And this is the same way with the media right now. They will continue asking for interviews. They will continue asking for what they think they can get until they find something they can raise their hat on and talk about that issue incessantly for the next, all the way up to November the 4th. That's what they're looking for. So why are you playing games? There's nothing you can do to satisfy them to make them leave you alone. You can't say, take this ice cream cone and don't bother me when I come back again. As soon as they finish it, you got another cone? You know?
Yeah. I'm still hungry. Yeah, I want 2 scoops. Here's the knock on, right? Uh, well, the debate is looming out there. You can't run from the debate. What does Donald Trump show up? Kamala hasn't done anything that I think should cause her camp any concern. Like you said, the interview is a wash. It's been done. Uh, I instead of watching the commentary this morning, I started reading. So I went to the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. Of course, the conservative columnists and all those outlets said she did a fair to bad job because they said, they talked about flip flop on fracking and some other stuff, right? But they couldn't nail her for being unable to communicate because if I deconstruct the debate, she was asked questions and she answered them, the ones she should have. She stayed away from the question about Donald Trump saying she wasn't black until recently and stuff like that. So I think in terms of her delivery and how she navigated, B minus, right? It wasn't A because the questions were A questions. You're right. She was never going to be able to come out of this with an A plus because the questions weren't there. And again, the interviewer somewhat determines on how it goes. And what bothered me and what bothers me about American news is that it turned into a commercial event. It was a damn commercial every 8 minutes, right? I looked at my watch, 8 minutes and whatever some odd seconds. There was a commercial break, and then they'd have an extended commercial break, so the continuity wasn't there, right? So it made it look like it was not, a congruent, presentation, and that's why I did not want her to do this because I knew, how American media is. I suppose if we had been in a foreign country, it would have just been a sit down 30 minutes. You talk all the way through, and it looks different. So that's that. Now the other part of it though is now there is time that she's going to have to show up on the debate stage, and a lot of the talk this week was what the rules were going to be. So let's take a look at this and we'll talk about that. So Val, that was one of the campaign people from Harris saying earlier this week that they wanted mics open and whatever, so on and so forth, right? And then Trump pushes back and says no, the rules should be the same, but he doesn't really care if the mics are open or not, whatever, blah blah blah. Let's talk brass tacks here. Does it even matter if the mics are open or not? It isn't the debate fraught with all kind of landmines. Joe Biden can tell you that. He had been traveling over to Europe. He had a cold and eventually, had COVID. And it was not a good idea for him to debate Donald Trump when he did. So you always can run into those things. What's going to happen with the debate with Harris and Trump in this first debate, whether the mics are open or not, is that problematic for her to even debate this dude? Can he whittle away at her via the debate?
Yes, it is problematic for her to debate. She can't win. Like I said, the only way she can win if he gets frustrated and decides to say, "Oh, screw you," and he walks off the stage. I always dream about that happening, but it probably never will. But here's where I see the issues. It was Trump's campaign who said that they didn't want the mics open when the Harris campaign said, yeah, let's leave them open, because the thought was from the Harris campaign that you're going to hear Trump talking under his breath and muttering stupid, incoherent things, and then you can use them against him, because the campaign knew that, we can't keep this guy quiet, Trump himself was the one that says, leave the mics open. I don't care one way or another. This is Trump talking because he likes talking over people, calling them lies, interrupting them, not allowing them to interrupt him. This is the argument playbook for a con artist, for somebody who is an arguer and don't give a shuck about the facts. Okay? That's why I don't want a situation where you have an open mic. I don't know how she'll deal with that, but it's not something that'll be positive. Kamala has been brought up in a environment where there are strict rules about who talks, what they can say, who they're talking to, when they can talk. This is a courtroom, right? Strict rules about that. And if the defendant tries to overtalk the prosecution, the judge will say, one more out of that and I'll hold you in contempt. And if it gets so bad, the judge will say, bailiff, remove the defendant from the courtroom. Okay? There ain't going to be none of that here. And if we recall back during the Clinton Trump debate, where he got out of his chair, walked over around her, stood over her, being 6'4", 6'3", however tall he is, and she's 5 something, as though he's breathing down her back. Moderator didn't say a thing about that. Interrupting, oh, that's a lie, that's not true. Why don't you tell them about this? Now, you always talk about that. And, polite Democrats, if they are talking and somebody interrupts them, they'll shut up and let the other person talk. I don't think Kamala is that way, but I don't like that format to allow this guy to get into that kind of back. I just don't like them debating anything because it's a break even or lose situation for her and a win or break even situation for him.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump's an ass. And he's gonna be an ass when he shows up anywhere, including the debate stage. I think it's fraud. I think she can handle herself because she's been in court, and that's going to be one thing in her favor. I think the same thing with Waltz if he debates JD Vance or whatever that guy's name is, real name is. When Waltz debates him, if he debates him, I think he'll hold his own as well. I think again, it doesn't really get you anything in terms of swaying people. I think the strategy that we talked about in the first segment, which is like getting on the ground, going to those states where they don't normally see a Democratic candidate show up, is going to yield the most benefit for them. So being in South Georgia in a Baker County makes more sense than, trying to win somebody over on the debate stage or on an interview with Dana Bash or whatever. I don't think that works to their advantage. But again, I'm not David Plus, so I don't know everything. And so I hear some music in my ears. That means we need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to shift gears. We've been talking a lot about Kamala Harris. I want to talk some specifics about Donald Trump and his big flip-flop on abortion. And I also want to talk about what's going on in the Middle East and interest rates probably going down pretty soon. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
Day one, I will seal the border and I will stop the invasion of millions of people into our country.
Harris, on the other hand, has expanded her lead as the candidate best suited to handle abortion rights.
And that's significant because we have had a series of elections now where we've really seen huge numbers of people turn out to vote on abortion, and it's going to be on the ballot in some of these key states. So that could be very meaningful for her.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Friday, August 30th. We're here a little bit early because it's a holiday weekend. People are going to be out traveling, so if you're out, be safe. If you're doing anything in the great outdoors, if you're in New England, where I just came from, there is a warning about West Nile virus or and it's something called triple E, which I had never heard of. And because it's a mosquito-borne disease, some people have died. There's also warnings into the Midwest in places like Illinois. So there are some municipalities, particularly in New Hampshire and Rhode Island and Maine, places that I've been recently, who are canceling any outdoor events in the evening, and you can't even have an outdoor event because this possibility of mosquito-borne disease. So if you happen to be in any of those places, or even here where we are in North Carolina, Val, I want you to be careful. Also today, I was looking at, I look at this flight tracker thing, Val, because I've been flying a lot lately. And there's going to be about 1 million people going through Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta today. That's a lot of people. And O'Hare was going to be the second busiest airport. There are a lot of people on the move, and they said by the end of the day on Wednesday, they expect about 17 million people to have flown between today and Wednesday of next week. That's a lot of freaking people. And it will certainly be the most people since the pandemic. Again, I've been in the airport a lot. I don't like it. It's busy. It's crowded. A lot of people are flying that didn't used to fly, and some people are not used to flying. I'll just put it that way. And they do things that make it uncomfortable for other people who fly a lot. Please don't be that person. Don't be the person who does stuff that makes it uncomfortable for other people to fly. If you're not really sure what to do, ask somebody or check before you act a fool, Val. I've seen some people drinking entirely too much.
Oh yeah.
Before they got on the plane. I'll just leave it at that. So, what we do want to talk about, let's get back to what we want to talk about. So, be safe is my point, and be sane if you're on an airplane. But what I want to do talk about is Donald Trump and his change of his mind on abortion. Now, he's couched it as he did not change his mind, but let's take a look at this clip. This is him saying he does not agree with a 6-week abortion ban.
I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path. Our country's been torn apart by Roe v. Wade for years. And if you go back 10 years, 15 years, all they wanted to do is they wanted it back in the states. They didn't want it to be in the federal government. I was able to do that. I believe in exceptions for life of the mother. If you look, incest, rape.
So, Val, Donald Trump is a citizen of the state of Florida because he lives in Mar-a-Lago. And on the ballot in Florida will be an amendment to either codify a 6-week abortion ban or not. And Donald Trump says, well, I don't agree with a 6-week abortion ban. Everybody just wanted it back at the states. This is how it should be, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But out of the other corner of his mouth, he says, hey, I'm the one that got rid of Roe versus Wade. He wants it both ways, Val. What do you think about his being adamant just now in that clip saying that he doesn't believe in a 6-week abortion ban? He also believes in exceptions when the vast majority of the people who consider themselves pro-life don't fall in that camp. Will he lose some support because of this? Will this hurt him at all by flip-flopping, where everybody was concerned about Kamala flip-flopping on fracking, which is not a big of an issue, but Trump just clearly flip-flopped on abortion.
You know, when I retired from the United States Army after 20 years of service, I knew I had to do something because my retirement pay wasn't enough for me to live on. So I moved here to North Carolina and took a look at some things. And the first job I was offered, I took because I needed to work. And that job was with the state government of North Carolina. And I was ended up being the assistant administrator for hospital management services at Dorothea Dix Hospital which, as most folks know, was a mental institution. It was a 750-bed hospital, a humongous hospital on 350 acres of land. And I had the responsibility at that time of running everything on the support side of the house. The administrator of the hospital, he ran the clinical side and those kinds of things. I didn't know anything about that. But I did learn enough to know that one thing you don't do, you get to know patients. And if you're there long enough, some of them seem rather normal to you. The last thing you can do, Ed, is get in an argument with a mental patient. You know why he's there, and you're sitting there arguing with him like he's sane and like he shouldn't be there. And now you walk away asking yourself the question, why can't he understand what I'm saying? Well, why don't other people understand that he's not making any sense? Well, hell, he shouldn't make any sense. Don't you see his address where he is? Why should he be asked to make sense? Donald Trump is got mental problems, folks. Donald Trump has been perpetrating as a normal human being. People have talked about having him sit down with a mental health professional and being interviewed and diagnosed as to what his mental condition is. The man is sick. I have seen patients that act more normal than Donald Trump does about so many things. So it bothers me when people assign normalcy to the things that Donald Trump does and then get upset or befuddled at why he is not acting as if he should act a certain way. If you look at Donald Trump as a undiagnosed mental patient, then everything becomes clear. You feel sorry for him. Okay, Donald, we understand. Don't worry. We'll take that under advisement, Donald. Be a good boy. That's the way you got to treat this guy. Because you begin to listen and believe the garbage that comes out of his mouth and try to untangle and untwine all of the contradictions that he spews, then you're going to be right there with him. He'll drive your ass crazy, okay? Donald Trump is not well. He's 78 years old. 78-year-old man wearing a toupee and wearing orange makeup, okay? He is not well at all. He has a complex with hand size, with crowd size, with other parts of his body size. This guy is not well, and people need to start treating him that way. Mark Mariel, the former mayor of New Orleans, is the only person, and I'm stealing half of the things I'm saying from him, I know, the only person who I've seen or heard to talk about Donald Trump in this fashion. More people need to start talking about Donald Trump in this fashion. He is not a well man. And let's stop trying to pretend that he is. If we talk about him in a way that he really is, we need to be asking him, please, will you sit down with a professional? You need some help. That's his problem. He needs help.
Yeah, Val, as you say that, I'm thinking if I was on the Harris campaign, I would have had an ad already this morning that I would have been blasting out everywhere of him saying how he said that women who had abortions there should be some consequences, and then juxtaposing it against what he said yesterday about how he's never been in favor of a 6-week ban when he said that there probably should be a ban period on abortion, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And also to your point, if it's not the Harris campaign itself, but some of the PACs that, because, Citizens United said that people can spend all this money, those PACs with all that money, I would have had ads talking about his orange face and his bad toupee and some of his mistakes and gaffes he's been making. Unfortunately, I've been watching a lot of his events lately, and he's gone away from having these big mega events because nobody's showing up in those numbers. He's been having these little events with just a few people in front of some police officers or whatever, and he still can't string a sentence together or a thought together. And to your point is there's not enough cutthroatness on the other side. It doesn't have to be Kamala Harris saying it. It could be Mark Morial saying it, but it needs to be more people saying it and more people exposing Trump's foibles, right? Because they're going to do that to Harris. One of the things that Trump has done, and I'm not even going to show it, but he was trying to allude to Kamala Harris maybe being loose in her past, right? But this is coming from the guy that sexually assaulted people. This is coming from the guy who was on the plane with Jeffrey Epstein, but is in pictures with Jeffrey Epstein. This is the guy who said he would sleep with his own daughter. This is coming from the guy that, and then I haven't seen enough of those kind of really hard attack ads coming at Trump. And I know a lot of people say, well, politics is so cutthroat and dirty and blah, blah. It is. Because I'm telling you, in the next 70 days, they're going to ratchet up from the other side, from the Republican side. They're going to try to do all they can to besmirch Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But we'll leave it at that. Now, so here's the $1 million question. They're advertising that there will be a debate, right? How is Kamala Harris and Donald Trump going to do at that debate? What do you think there's anything between now and the time that debate happens that could spell doom for Kamala Harris when she gets on stage? I haven't seen them land a blow yet on her. But what do you think their attack is going to be when they finally get on stage?
Well, the things that came out of this interview, you will see highlighted during the debate. In other words, she will be asked questions about her flip-flop on fracking and immigration and things of that nature. And as she tries to answer, he will interrupt, or when he's asked a question, he won't answer that question. And he'll say, yeah, before I get to that, let me go back on her last answer. She lied about that. And let me tell you what the real truth is. That's not a debate. It's bullcrap. And I don't, for the life of me, understand why somebody in the Harris campaign doesn't understand this, that they can't see what's about to happen with this. Mm-hmm. And I hope I am just as wrong as I can be, but that's my fear, Ed, that they've already planned this stuff out, the Trump boys. And it's not going to be some nice collegiate debate with rules and all of this other kind of stuff. They're trying to turn it into a fist fight, a food fight, what the hell ever. They don't have anything to lose.
Yeah, they don't.
They're not going to win any points by playing by the rules and being gentile and nice and decent. They don't have anything to win by doing that. They have a lot to win by becoming a bull in the china shop, just wrecking everything, messing everything.
And throwing shit at the wall.
And
right.
Forget about fact checking.
Yeah.
Forget about that.
So to your point, Val, as we wrap up this episode, two things that did come up in the interview. Harris did talk about the economy and how they had to make sure the economy was back moving in the right direction, because Dana Bash asked her why didn't they propose some of the things that she said she wanted to do on her first day. And Harris correctly said that, you can't do both things. The economy was in shambles. The unemployment rate was rising on it. And we know that interest rates are getting ready to come down. We know the stock market is at an all-time high, but we also know the stock market is not the economy, but it is at an all-time high. We do know that housing prices have stabilized. We do know that interest rates for houses will be reduced, and they started coming down in the last few weeks. And I think that's a direct result of some of the things that the Harris Biden administration did. You see, I flipped that because, yeah. But she also answered a question about the Middle East, and she said that there had to be a two-state solution. But at the same time, she said that she was still supporter of Israel. So let's take the Israel question first. What did you think about that answer? I can tell you what I thought about it, but tell me what you thought about it.
Well, I thought that was she was answering the question to hold on to her position as vice president under Joe Biden right up until January the 20th. She's not going to deviate from that. Even if she wins on November the 5th, she's going to be the vice president until January 20th. So she can't get herself in a position that she's disagreeing with her boss right now. So she has to say that. Joe Biden has said he is 100% behind Israel. So she has to say that as well. And at the same time, she knows that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is, might as well say it, pro-Palestinian. Okay? That's the way that is. So she's trying to walk a narrow line here, rope between the two. And I thought she did a pretty good job at it, because people that know her and support her and going to vote for her and that kind of thing expect that she'll come down on the side of Israel all the way up until January 21st. And then she'll tell Netanyahu, there's a new sheriff in town and you're going to have to change your behavior or else. I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, good answer, because that's the right answer. That is what I was thinking. That's my assessment of that too. Because you can't go in and flip over the table right in the temple this close to the election, because you're still working for Joe Biden. He's still the president. Right. Now, one thing that's going to happen tonight is Kamala Harris is going to appear with Joe Biden in Pennsylvania over the weekend. So Joe Biden's going to be in Pennsylvania campaigning on behalf of Kamala Harris. I think that's
and let me say this right here, Ed, real quick. Yeah. Is that's what she needs to do. And when one of these stations like Fox or ABC comes for an interview, she needs to say, hey, I'm going to be in Pennsylvania day after tomorrow with a rally. You're welcome to come and ask questions, but I will not sit down for no special interview with you. I have things. My press secretary will give you my schedule between now and November the 5th. Feel free to attend. And leave it at that.
Been there, done that, right? we did the interview. You complained that it hadn't done one, and she did it, and now let's move on. Hey, Val, in the time we got left here, I always ask you anything we need to look out for, anything that you want to tell us.
Well, I'll tell you this: vote. That's the message that I have to everybody between now and the 5th of November. And if you part of the great North State, as we call it here in North Carolina, absentee ballots will be mailed out soon. You can start filling them out. That only got 8 days until that happens from now. They'll be mailed out, so you can start picking your candidates and voting real soon. That's why it's been a lot of time spent in North Carolina, because if people are getting their absentee ballots in 8 days, and they fill them out and send them back in, and you come to North Carolina to campaign a month from now, you can't get those guys. They've already voted. So you better get them now. You better get them now.
Yep.
But
vote. Vote. Yeah, I agree with you. And Tim Walz, he was here at Cookout. That seems to be the thing to do, to go to Cookout. If you're not from North Carolina, you may not know what Cookout is. It's just a little shack, and they're all over the place. And kids go there late at night to eat, and the food is bad and cheap, and they have milkshakes. But for political candidates, at least the Democratic ones, that's the thing to do, to go to Cookout. because it shows that you're in tune with the young people, I guess, right? Because young people are there all times of day and night getting really bad cheap hamburgers or in
Right.
milkshakes. But anyway, Val, again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to spend some time with us. Again, continue to let people know we're here. I know I'm always promising to do certain things, but one thing I am going to do is starting in a couple of weeks. We're gonna do some shorts. So during the week, you may just see me or Val show up for a minute or two with some little shorts where we just got something on our mind instead of waiting until the weekend to do a long hour long. We may do a minute or two here or there, just some commentary because the young people, their attention span isn't all that good, but old people, their attention span ain't all that good either. And so it seems like doing a 1 minute or 2 minute thing is the thing to do now. And so that'll be showing up in places like TikTok, on the X, formerly known as Twitter, that kind of thing. We're going to start doing some of those. So be on the lookout for that. Anything that you want to tell us, you can always send me an email at ed@thedealwithedclark.com. You can also always send a Val email at ncblackvote@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you because a lot of times when I hear from folks, they're not real happy. They're on the right, Val. And they got ugly things to say. But that's okay, too. I want to hear that because usually when you come at me that way, you're not saying anything about what I said. You're saying stuff about me personally, or you're saying something in favor of Donald Trump, but you're not thinking in terms of whether or not Donald Trump is really on your side. I'll just leave it at that. So in the meantime, go out and do something good for somebody today, and I really do mean that. And we'll see you next time on another edition of The Deal. All right, bye.